Howdy, everybody. This is David Sanchez, and this is episode number 27 of the Riffs or Die podcast. This is airing on Thursday, February 11th, 2021. Thanks a lot for checking it out. On this episode, we got the lead shred man from Havok, Mr. Reece Scruggs. I met this guy about 10 years ago when we needed a new lead guitar player, and he came in and tracked Time Is Up. And that was our intro to him being in the band. We'd never played a show with him. We just dove straight into recording. And then shortly after that, we hit the road a lot. Thanks a lot for tuning in. And just a quick reminder before we dive into this extensive, long, but very interesting episode, you can always support the podcast by going to riffsordie.com and pick up some merch, or you can subscribe on patreon.com/riffsordie. Both of those are great ways to support the podcast. And also, if you haven't already, go to the Riffs or Die YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button on there. If you have any questions or comments for the podcast, please send them over to podcast@riffsordie.com. And don't forget, Patreon subscribers get discounts at riffsordie.com. Also, you can get your hands on bonus episodes of the podcast, handwritten lyrics, free merchandise, and live Zoom hangouts every month. So if you want to hang out in person, shoot the shit, ask me anything you want, go and sign up at patreon.com/riffsordie, and let's hang out, and I'll shoot you some cool Riffs or Die swag in the mail. Please check the description below on this podcast episode if you want the links to Reece's other band, Monolith, and Reece's Instagram, and all kinds of other good stuff that is related to what we talked about here in the podcast. I love this guy a lot, and he is a super shredder extraordinaire. Try saying that 10 times fast. And genuinely interested in a lot of different things, and I had a really good time talking with him. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. So here he is, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Reece Scruggs. Given the fact that we are not touring right now, like we were supposed to all year, what are you up to?
It was before stuff started to really hit the fan and the picture was super clear. I kind of saw the writing on the wall, and I was like, I have to figure something out. So I was going back and forth with Jen, and I was just like, I'm going to hit up as many people as I possibly can, maybe see about, maybe getting some work, some part-time work, something where I could guarantee some money, some cash flow going into the household, because it was looking like she was going to be out of her job. She's a bartender, and it just didn't look great for anyone in our field and her field. And so I just asked around, and one of my buddies was like, yeah, actually need some work with everything hitting and everything starting to kind of hit the fan, basically. We need some work in the warehouse. So I've been working in a warehouse in Charlestown or Ranson, West Virginia at Dr. Pepper Mountain Dew, slanging sodas, stacking pallets, and just...
Slanging sodas?
Slang and soda, yeah.
You're a soda jerk?
I'm a soda jerk, yeah. Yeah, basically. But yeah, I mean, just working my ass off, and then that's basically taken up, large portions of my day from Monday to Friday. But staying on top of music stuff and writing and endorsements and kind of revisiting my old band and, that sort of thing, to keep me sane and be creative and stuff. So, yeah.
Are you still doing lessons?
Oh, yeah. Definitely still doing lessons. I do lessons maybe 4 or 5 times a week. I've still got my same regulars that I've had since we were touring, since back in the Conformicide days, ever since I started giving online lessons. So that's been pretty cool.
Rad.
Yeah.
If people want to get a lesson from you, how do they do that?
Well, I have an official lessons email, reeceslessons@gmail.com. And then I'm also available on my social media, predominantly Instagram. It's where I basically do everything. Anything that's seen outside of Instagram is just connected through Instagram, just because, keeping up with all the social media stuff is a little much for me. And Instagram seems to be the more straightforward and less, if you want it to be, less clouded or less, full of a bunch of bullshit. So
For sure, yeah, it's less densely packed with people's stupid opinions and conversations that wind up going on 17 comments longer than they should have.
yeah, exactly. I have a Facebook, but it's been a private Facebook for a very long time now, and it's solely just kept around and activated just so that whenever we're on the road, my dad can see whatever I'm doing, from town to town, country to country, or whatever. Otherwise, I would have gotten rid of it forever ago. It's such horseshit.
Yeah, I totally agree. If we didn't have band stuff and quote business stuff to do on there, I'm not sure I would be on there at all.
Yeah, definitely.
Because man, it is completely tanked. Like Facebook used to be a big thing, and a lot of people used to participate and go there to find information and interact with bands and stuff. But anymore, it's fucking graveyard, basically.
Right. Yeah.
I've noticed whenever we post something on the Havok page, we'll get like 20 times the amount of engagement on Instagram versus Facebook. It's crazy. Well, that was smart on Facebook's part to buy up Instagram, I guess. The last time we talked, we were talking about, keeping tabs on propaganda and, watching news from all angles just to keep tabs on what people are believing this week.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really cool that you do that, because I do the exact same thing. It's good to be aware of the propaganda that is being implemented and, the attempted brainwash of people to be aware of what's going on. I think is smart, even if you can't get to the bottom of the story, because, God knows we always have 40 different angles and 40 different stories being told to us, so it's hard to sift through the debris and figure out what's real.
Absolutely. It's like we were talking about a couple of days ago. I was really starting to ramp up and get into things right as the election happened, and it's just wild. I was starting to get. Sorry, I'm turning my monitors down real quick. I was starting to get heavier into things as the election happened, because I kept just hearing about certain topics and certain things, certain groups. And for the longest time, I was listening to podcasts where I was learning things, but they were topics in which I was already heavily interested in. And it was the whole political side of things is just, it has worn me out for the past, I don't know, however many years, to the point where I've taken an active approach and being inactive and wanting to know, or, just doing the need to know stuff and not really believing that. But I kept hearing about all these different things within the circles, or within the things that it would creep into this to the things that I was already listening to that had really nothing to do with it, just because everything was just getting so out of hand. So I was like, okay, what's this all about? And then I would actively try to figure out and find out which podcasts to listen to get a side of one story, and then the completely other side of the spectrum story. And then while doing that for the longest time, I would periodically turn on CNN, or I'd turn on Fox News, or I'd turn on one of our, major news outlets on TV, and just kind of see where everything was. And as the election was happening, and I guess it had already been decided, it looked so, personally for me, it looked like they were calling things straight down the middle for a little bit. And even when the election was going on, it was very surprising to people on the right when they were so like, all Trump supporters and all, seriously like, invested right wingers and QAnon believers and stuff like that were so mad at Fox News when they were just like, "Yep, Joe Biden's the president," and I thought that was pretty interesting. So I had to dig deep into that, what that was all about, because I was just like, okay, well, if they're news, I know it's Fox News, but they're just reporting the facts. So okay, I need to
allegedly,
yeah, right. I need to figure out what's going on here, and then I would tune into like a CNN after the election happened. Well, after the Capitol thing happened, as it was happening. Mm-hmm. As it was happening, I was watching it, and I was like, "This is." It didn't come out until days or maybe a week later, as far as like there were casualties, that sort of thing. So that sucks. That's terrible. But at the same time, when I was watching it, I was looking at it, and more than anything, I was watching CNN at the time, and they were like, "This is an incredibly dark day for our country." And I was just watching it going, this is really fucking stupid. Like, it was, my reaction to it was, there's a lot of children here. There's a lot of childish.
At the rally, you mean?
At the
siege
I get. Or insurrection, that sort of thing. I was watching it on the news going, this is pretty ridiculous. Not thinking it was, a tragedy for our country or a black day on the, in United States history. I just thought it was absolutely ridiculous and bogus and achieved nothing. And I don't know. It just didn't seem the way they were reporting it, but I also get the way they were reporting it as well. But then after that, I tune into CNN, and it's like every single person is, every single person affiliated, everyone who's waving a Gadsden flag, everyone who is, that sort of stuff. They're criminals, and they're this, and they're that. And it was like, wow, I have to do more. I have to see what's going on both sides of the spectrum. I really have to dig deep and see how people are thinking, because it was. I knew that things were pretty nuts on both sides of the spectrum, and people were being divided more and more. I got led down that too, and I still feel that way with the whole Trump side of stuff. Like, it was a cartoon sideshow to me, and so I'm grateful that I don't have to look at his face anymore. But at the same time, I want to hear and see a balance shift and not so much more division. But now it seems like they're like the other side is doing the exact same thing the other side was doing.
It's same shit, different guy kicking his feet up in the Oval Office.
Yeah, it's
the same way it's always been our whole lifetimes.
I know, and I've paid attention to know. I've paid attention enough to know that, and for sure, and it just, I don't know, because I am consciously making a decision to get information from every side and get into the crackpot theories of this, that, or the other, and then maybe hearing some of those quote unquote crackpot theories, and then eventually figuring out that maybe some of this stuff is, on both sides of the spectrum is, I don't know, resonates with me, or I just think it's absolute horseshit. Like all this stuff, I'm just making a conscious decision to listen to it, and making my own mind up, going, okay, this is the way that you think, and it stems from this, and I have to understand where this person's coming from, or what this group of people, where it comes from, and why they are so behind it. I want to figure that out. I don't want to automatically just talk out of my ass, and especially for being a person, previous to this whole this current political time that we're in. I wasn't the person who was, looking up every fact and trying to be super knowledgeable in it. So I wanted to make a conscious decision to research this stuff and see where everybody's heads were, so that if I ever had an opinion, I could at least try to know what I'm talking about for my own, educated opinion.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The world we live in is getting more and more interesting, or some would say crazy, every week. And I think we're going to see some really crazy shit in our lifetime. But
I agree.
I know that you are among millions of other people that wish that someday some of this mess is going to be sorted out by the revelation of extraterrestrial beings.
Yes, sir.
What are your thoughts on the aliens?
I think that all stems. I think with my beliefs and hoping that there is something like that. That I think it's. I think it's. My hopes is that it would remedy people's belief system. Unless you're one of the people who's going to be grasping for straws, kind of like QAnon is grasping for, Trump to come out in the 45th hour to topple Joe Biden's evil child blood drinking sex ring or whatever. Is that by having an extraterrestrial intervention that it kind of breaks people's I wouldn't say faith, I wouldn't say faith or any of that other stuff. To believe in something in a positive way is cool, and I'm for it. I don't care what it is, as long as you're doing good and not hurting anyone. But the super like evangelical extremist way of thinking, that it's got to be this way. It's this way, and I'll prove it. Until you're dead. When people, I always hope that if people saw something like that, if that were real to someone, they would go, "Oh my God, I've been doing a bad job. I don't believe the right things, and I'm not living the way that I should have lived, and this is this is proof," or something like that. So that was always my hope. But yeah, I am no different than the X-Files and wanting to believe, for sure.
What do you think is the best case scenario if aliens do come? What happens to the human race? Best case scenario, what's the big switch that flips if aliens are revealed or reveal themselves or whatever? What's the ideal situation? What do you think would happen on a global scale?
There's a pie in the sky fantasy way of thinking about it as far as how what I would like to see. I think it has something to do with what I just talked about, that people start to kind of, I think kind of sort of immediately the people at our level, the people who are thinking or semi-thinking, or the people who don't necessarily want to be a part of the everyday mundane life system type things, they're going to go, okay, here it is. This is it, and let's start moving towards that direction. But that's the pie in the sky type way of thinking, that people will kind of reevaluate their extremists, kind of narrow-minded, tunnel vision ideas and beliefs and stuff like that, and maybe politically as well. But realistically, when faced with these things, and historically in conspiracy, when anything extraterrestrial comes up, you always hear about the technology or the agreements with extraterrestrial beings, with governments, and using their weapons and the resources and the so on and so forth. So if that were to eventually reveal itself, I think you would have a whole lot of political intervention, a whole lot more control, a whole lot more of that, because I think that's the natural reaction of a system in which there's, what we have. What we have. If that were a reality, then it would be. We've got to get the military on this. Would be the natural reaction.
Yeah, always in all the movies.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and in all the movies, yeah. I mean, it is in all the movies, but at the same time, it's like it's my hope that something good comes out of it, and that we can finally realize it's like the Christmas tree. It's like the Christmas treaty and or the Christmas peace in World War I, where the French and the Germans were blowing the hell out of each other for a stretch of land called no man's land. Any stretch of land between trenches. And it was Christmas time, and someone decided to play soccer. They just had a soccer ball. And
they stopped killing each other for one day.
They stopped killing each other for one day until someone decided they needed to stop killing each other. Then they figured out for one day they could stop killing each other and that it was stupid. And someone decided that they needed to start killing each other, and then we went back to war. And that's... I think that in a nutshell is extraterrestrials coming and showing themselves to all of mankind. Is like you would have this moment of semi-clarity, and then it would be like, okay, now let's go blow the shit out of that thing because we don't understand what it is. And any sort of other than some pilots in the sky, when it comes to the military having reports on extraterrestrial anything, a lot of the times, what do? They fire at it. So it's that in a nutshell is what I think would happen in reality.
So speaking of conspiracies and aliens, have you ever heard of Project Bluebeam?
No, not Bluebeam.
So Project Bluebeam is basically that if aliens show up, it's going to be completely faked with holograms, and they will fake an alien invasion to unite the entire world under one world government and get rid of borders and get rid of nations. And it'll be used as the excuse that every country needs to unite because we got to fight these fucking aliens.
Yeah, I do remember that now. I just didn't know what the name was.
Yeah, Project Bluebeam. I mean, the technology exists for them to fake an alien invasion with holograms, and there's a lot of speculation that direct energy weapons exist. Wouldn't be unthinkable for them to fire something from space, from a satellite, and use holograms to fake an alien invasion.
Oh man,
people would freak the fuck out. That's a theory that maybe that's how it goes down. I don't know. We're gonna see, or maybe we won't see, but guaranteed we're going to see some crazy shit in our lifetime. I think this is the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. They were working on those sound and energy weapons, back in the Nazis were working on those things, and then the Russians and the United States government scooped those guys up to develop rocket technology to go to the moon. Not talking about fake moon landing. I'm talking about the concept of going to the moon. They were brought on to create nuclear warheads to reach each other's lands. So, but yeah, they were developing those types of technology and messing around with alternative style weapons since the 30s and the 40s. So,
yeah, and even before the Nazis, Tesla claimed that he had the death ray.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
The weapon to end all wars, because whoever would have it would win no matter what.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, crazy shit. Changing gears here a little bit, a Patreon subscriber wrote in, I have a few questions here for you.
Okay.
And I want to read this first one and get your opinion. This person wrote in and said, in the movie This Is Spinal Tap, Nigel Tufnell refers to one of his guitars as the one that shall never be played, or looked at for that matter. This person is wondering if Captain Scruggs has an axe too amazing to touch.
Oh, I know that there are at least a couple guitars that will not be gigged. at least anymore. And by gigged, I mean anything on, like a Havok type of road warrior style trip, and that would be my Gibson Les Paul Custom. It's seen many shows. It's recorded with Monolith and gigged with Monolith, but as far as it being taken anywhere outside of Winchester, Virginia, it's never going to happen. And anything that I got when I was a kid that was a present from family or any heirloom style thing, like I just restored and set up my dad's first ever guitar. It's a 1970 something Univox hollow body guitar.
That thing's cool.
Yeah, it's cool, and he picked it up because it looked like Chuck Berry's guitar. It's the whole reason he got it. He loves Chuck Berry, and he got that. He thought he would be really cool with it, and never saw. He learned some chords. And never saw the light of day until I started to, pluck around on one of the acoustics and decided I wanted to play. And then he started picking it up again. But everything else is that I have right now in modern times has been out on the road. A lot of Roar stuff, a lot of stuff that I'm waiting to gig, like my Dean guitars.
So the only one that's like not to be looked at is your Gibson Les Paul Custom.
Yeah, I would say that would.
Don't even look at it.
Yeah, don't even look at it. No one can touch it. Yeah,
you can just hear the sustain.
Yeah. It's badass. And too fragile. Like it's so fickle. Like when I first got it, I bought it for myself when I was 18, and it was so much money. And I, of course, being a 33-year-old person now, I'm looking at myself when I was 18 buying a $5,000 guitar going, wow, that's really stupid. But I used to just salivate over musician friends' catalogs looking at Gibson Les Pauls. And
yours is white, right?
Yeah, mine's Alpine white.
Yeah, Randy Rhoads.
Yeah, Randy Rhoads. And just like Randy Rhoads played in really smoky bars and clubs, I played in really smoky bars and clubs with that thing, and it's now yellowed, which is pretty cool.
Was it brand new?
Yeah, brand new. Yeah, brand new.
Okay.
And yeah, that's what a lot of people don't realize about Randy's custom is that it was Alpine white and it yellowed over the years.
Yep.
But
as they do.
Yeah, mine. I got mine and I gigged with it for one night. I got on stage with a friend's band, so I just got the guitar. I think I had it for maybe like 2-3 days. And I used to wear these gigantic belt buckles back in the day because I don't know why. And I got home the next day. It was Sunday. Naturally, bar bands play on Saturday nights. And it was Sunday, and I looked at the back of my guitar, and it was all pockmarked, surface scratched, and everything on the back. And I just bought this fucking guitar, and I was so crushed. And then my dad always, like he always does, kind of even me out with some words of wisdom. He's like, "What are you gonna think when you're touring?" At this time, I'm 18 years old, so this was before then. Never mind. He smoothed everything out just by going, well, it's got personality now. Now you have a story with it. So
for sure. Well, and thank God it's on the fucking back.
Yeah. But now,
you don't have belt buckle rash on the front.
It's gone through so much more now. Like there's this permanent stain on it from a hoodie I used to have. It's got two big Metallica things on the hoodie now. It's like patches, but it used to be a Fender hoodie. And it was really thick print in silver. And the ink was really thick silver. I wouldn't say glitter, but like metallic silver Fender logo. Yeah. And I used to play the shit out of my Les Paul, and I used to have it like really up high so I could, just pay attention to what I was doing. I was practicing one time, and it just stained the shit out of the top of it. And,
oh no!
And it won't go anywhere now. So yeah, it's been through a lot of stuff, and it's like I said,
be able to buff that out.
Yeah, but I mean, again, I have a story, and it's no big deal. But as far as other people touching a thing, it ain't happening. I'll ruin it all I want, but no one else will.
Sure, fair enough. Well, everybody that follows you on social media and stuff probably sees that you're now a man of Dean guitars.
Yes.
And Seymour Duncan.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I know that when you first joined Havok, you were playing a Dean, and you recorded all the solos that are on Time Is Up on a Dean Razorback ML.
Yep.
Were there Duncans in that pickup? Duncan pickups in that guitar as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
A Dimebag set, a Razorback, and a 59. Yep.
Right. Sweet. So I know Seymour Duncan makes a ton of different pickups. Do you have any specifically that you're more partial to than others?
What was it? Dimebucker or 59? I don't know if I saw that. I love the Dimebucker. It's a great passive pickup. It made me really realize that passive tone is what I wanted to go after early on, and what I really liked. Very hot pickup, but at the same time, incredibly dynamic with being such a high gain pickup. And I guess before we started the conformicide tracking, I guess the literal tracking, we were doing a bunch of sessions, writing sessions, and some touring before that. And I really fell in love with the Jason Becker Perpetual Burn pickup.
And the colorful ones.
Yeah, we ended up using that pickup on all of my side of conformicide rhythms. You had tracked whole tracks with that guitar that had that humbucker in it because of my sound or whatever. I had done a lot of leads with that on that record. I really fell in love with that one. And there's some stuff that I'm really waiting to try right now. I just ordered a parallel axis distortion because of Blue Saraceno, for one. He's got a signature pickup with Seymour Duncan. But the reason I ordered the distortion model is because I saw Brandon Ellis had a parallel axis distortion model in his guitar. So it was kind of the combination of loving Blue Saraceno for so many years and seeing him play the parallel axis, and then also the added effect of Brandon Ellis endorsing the distortion model. So I want to check that out. That one's on its way right now. So I can't wait to get that in my my TBZ, my Brazilian TBZ Dean Select.
Is the TBZ Tobacco Burst Zebra? What's the TBZ stand for?
Yeah, it's something along the lines of that. Brazilian Tobacco Burst something or other.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. They have a V version. They have a V version of this too.
Right. So that parallel axis pickup looks really fucking cool too.
Yeah, it looks great. Yeah.
It looks amazing. It's got the poles are not really poles. It's more like it's got grids or like lines on it that are all kind of flat. It doesn't look like a normal humbucker pickup to me. I've never seen another pickup that looks like that, actually.
Yeah. I really like the way that one looks, and I really like the way that there's another one that has a traditional style open pickup coil look with the top, and it's a humbucker, but the top of the humbucker looks like a blade. I really like that too. And they have
cool.
They have a high gain, rock and metal version of that one too. I may get one of those as well just to try out. So I'll
have to check that out. Do you know what it's called?
Man, not off the top of my head, but that's what we have Google for, right? So
yeah, sure. You can Google that up.
The pickup's name is P-Rails.
P-Rails.
P-Rails. So there's the triple shot. P-Rails triple shot. They're black and they're way higher output. So there's there's a cream version, and that one's like more for blues rock and stuff like that. And then they have this black one that's higher output and can do a lot more heavier grainy stuff. It's called the Hot P Rails.
Hot P Rails.
Hot P.
Endorsed by R. Kelly.
Oh yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll have to look those up.
Yeah, check those out. And then Wes Halk's signature pickup, the Jupiter, I'd like to try out at some point in time as well. So yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that
nice.
I want to get my hands on. I've got so much experience with like the JB. I got a lot of experience, a lot of time into the Dimebuckers. I love them. And then the TBZ's got a set that is not so common in it, and I can never remember it because it doesn't have like a flat out like name. It's just like a standard serial number type name with a bunch of numbers and one or two letters or something. I don't know what it is, but they sound cool. They're very clean, very, very clean.
Sweet. So all the Deans that you've gotten are MLs with the exception of that Nash Vegas, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is like a Telecaster?
Yeah, it's a Telecaster with a, cool like heavy metal headstock.
Yeah, sweet. And the big oversized logo like they had back in the day in the 80s.
And a Floyd Rose, of course. Got to have that.
Sweet.
Yeah, that thing's awesome.
Yeah, that thing looks really cool. And actually all the Deans that you have look amazing. And that Dime Burst,
the Dime Slime.
You have, the Dime Slime. I saw that thing in person at NAMM, and I was like, holy shit, that thing is so cool looking. Yeah, I always thought they were cool looking in magazines and stuff back in the day, but that was the first time I got a really good look in person at one, and I was really impressed by like the color. They're super bright. Yeah,
and the wood grain, like I opened up the case and was just completely blown away. Like no picture, video, or anything can do it justice. It just does not register even with a high quality camera or anything. Like to see it in person is completely different than a video or a picture. And it's amazing, man. And that guitar, as soon as I grabbed it, it doesn't fight me with anything that I do. And that was the one thing that with my Dean guitars in the past that they just never did, was fight me. If I wanted to do something with them, if I had an idea or I was trying to achieve something on the fretboard, on the guitar in general, the necks were perfectly made for me to just think it and then do it. And these are no different. It's the same feel as when I had, over 10 years ago. So
sweet. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, man.
And obviously Dean has a really big, sweet roster, so that's got to be cool to be on that team, especially with, I know you're a gigantic Dimebag Darrell fan, and obviously Dimebag Darrell, Dean are synonymous.
Yeah, man. It is really cool, and they do have a big roster, but at the same time, not as big as some other companies. And that was one of the things that, like, and for all the success for other companies, I mean, that's super cool. It's nothing to talk shit about other companies or anything, but like one of the main factors for me with getting with another bigger guitar company, because that was a big step for me. I for the longest time, I just did not want to do it. But one of the most attractive things about Dean was the roster. They do have a good amount of people on the roster, but it's not pages worth, and it's not just something where I feel like I would get lost in the shuffle, and just the communication with my artist reps and just with the owner himself who comments on my Instagram and has nothing but nice things to say. I mean, that right there is it is everything in a nutshell with my experience with Dean. Ever since kind of starting up conversations with Chris Canella back when we did Monterey Metal Fest in Mexico. Mm-hmm. He was playing with egocide, and after we had played our slots, we met up with him in a bar, and he was just like, dude, we would love to have you over at the company. And he stuck with it every step of the way, and it just went from there. It's just been nothing but, pure class all the way.
That's great. So I got to ask you this, and I can edit this out if need be, but
sure.
Is there any plan for a Reece Scruggs custom or a signature model or a star shape? You've become fairly recognizable for having a star-shaped guitar on stage. So do you have anything you can reveal about that?
Yeah, I can. there's plans to do a custom and then plans to do something after a custom happens, but that really depends on the the question of being able to be seen touring again. It's super important for their artists to be out doing what we do, and it's not that they don't. It's not that they can't justify it, but when you're a band that's so synonymous with being on the road and being road warriors, they, that's one of the aspects that was so attractive about what I did to them, is that I'm not just going to be seen on the internet. I'm going to be seen in front of actual living human beings and playing these things. And so that's the idea, is to have everything kind of when the ball can get rolling again, whenever that is, then that's when, steps will be made for those types of things to happen. But we're not ruling out the possibility of doing something in this time as well. But the question about the star shape, on the other hand, no one's ever told me yes. No one's ever told me no. I do remember Chris, when we were having that discussion in Mexico, I was like, I play stars. I don't want to rip off Dime too much. I love MLs, but at the same time, I've been playing a star shape for many years now. And I was like, would there be any sort of possibility of creating a star and doing an upside down headstock, a reverse headstock, like a hockey stick or something like that? And to which he said, I think we could do that. So
cool.
We'll see. And, the future with them looks really promising for any of that stuff. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great, dude. Congratulations.
Thanks. Should be cool. I'm really happy where I'm at. So
it's great. Yeah, I'm stoked for you.
Thanks, man.
Well deserved. Obviously, you're known for being a super shredder. And I have another question here that's from a Patreon subscriber.
Okay.
That's related to super shredding.
Awesome.
This person said, "Hi, Reece. It's sick the way you play guitar. So how do you practice, and what do you recommend to reach that speed and level, or at least try? Also, thanks for the pic you gave me in Chile. I never had the chance to thank you for that."
Awesome. My practice routine is something I take pretty seriously. Now, just like every other guitar player, whether you're a beginner or is super advanced or pro or whatever it is, you're going to have times where literally all you do with picking up your guitar is noodling and fucking around. And that happens with me quite often. But I've done this thing since my time's been pretty limited, and my practice routines or my times with my guitar have, been basically cut in half, more than half, with the job and everything else. I'm not complaining. It's just the way it is time management. And my time management, when I have an allotted when I have a time, I pick and choose exactly what I'm going to spend that time on, trying to improve my guitar playing in some sort of way, sharpening one blade at a time.
Yeah, making a goal and attacking that.
Yeah, and one of those practice sessions might be nothing but metronome work. And that could mean all techniques, but literally playing with the metronome the whole time, playing at various BPMs, sticking to everything sounding super clean, whether it's tapping, whether it's picking, whether it's legato, whether it's so on and so forth. Riffing, playing rhythms, down picking, alternate picking, all of that stuff. Then another day or another practice session is just throwing on a YouTube playlist, which my go-to playlist is Elevated Jam Tracks. elevated jam tracks, you throw one on a playlist, and it's nothing but backing tracks of different types of music, guitar music, from blues to rock to funk to country to, metal to all of that stuff. And in various keys. And the cool thing about elevated jam tracks is that it throws up the mode that the guy sticks in. And with that mode, there's a picture of the actual mode chart on the screen.
Yeah, I've seen some of those videos. I've played along with stuff like that. It could have been from elevated jam tracks, but I'm not sure.
It's so helpful. I mean, and it's super cool. And it also gets you out of your wheelhouse. It gets you out of your comfort zone when it comes to improvising. So what I'm saying is I throw on those tracks and I improvise, and I feel that improvisation these days in my playing, or in my, right now as me at 33, I feel that improv is the most important part of a skill set that I could have right now, because I feel that I could go, being super sharp and having the skill set, playing super fluid, passages, and knowing where notes can go and what to use and what not to use. And improv, I can go and play in any type of situation. I can get on stage with a bar band and play. Doesn't matter what it is. I can go into a studio and improv a solo and start writing something just with a couple notes and come up with something killer. I could come up with something. I could come up with a cool lick for a Havok solo section a lot quicker than I used to. I can think of new, different things to do with the Monolith project that I'm doing, stuff like that. So it's like I really feel that this stage in my game, that improv is a super, super important part to work on. And then, also with time management, going from there, I play along with tracks, songs. I play along with songs from my band. I play along, with Havok stuff, Monolith stuff. I play along with stuff that I'm familiar with, like Testament or Pantera, but I also play along with country tracks. I try to work on rhythm stuff. And then one of those practice sessions might be learning someone else's guitar solo. And not because I want to have it out there for, social media purposes or whatever. It's that when you choose to do a deep dive into someone else's style of playing, you can get into the mindset of a person's way of thinking when it comes to writing that solo. Why did they do this? Why did they do that? Why did they pick that note? Why did they bend that one? And you also can steal a bunch of stuff too. I'm very guilty of that, but I also think that's really cool, is that if you're able to kind of take a little part of what these killer guys do and make it your own, then you're developing your own style piece by piece, and having that understanding is super important, especially if that's, if you're playing that style of music that you're trying to learn a solo from, then you're understanding exactly what works in that genre, and you're understanding your style of music, where you want to go with it, what you can do with it, and so on and so forth. So I think about those things when I think about practice, and it's doing the job for me so far.
Yeah, and instead of stealing, we'll just call it borrowing.
Yeah, we're borrowing. Yeah,
borrow this dude's lick, just change a couple of notes. But yeah, I know what you mean. It's the same kind of thing when writing songs and shit. I'll get inspiration from listening to a Devo song, or I'll get inspiration from listening to a fucking Foreigner song, but it's not necessarily that you just write the whole thing. You just take a little inspiration.
Yeah, definitely.
Which there's nothing wrong with whatsoever. And I have often gotten the question of, like, how do I find my own musical voice and start writing riffs that sound like me? Or, I have writer's block. What can I do? I tell people, like, learn other people's stuff, because it might light a spark in your brain to go down this other road. And at least, like you said, you can get inside someone else's head and, start to decipher and decode how their brain works and kind of factor that into your own style. It's a good way to get more creative. It sounds counterintuitive, but a good way to get more creative is to learn other people's stuff.
Yeah, I've been listening to a all guitar related podcast, which is pretty cool. And one of the hosts was saying that he gets the question of finding your own voice and standing apart and being unique and all this other stuff. And his response to people who say those things is don't try to do it at all. That the way that you learn and what you eventually end up doing, it's going to be kind of tailored. It's going to be you. It's going to be you in the long run anyway. That if you learn a scale, only you're playing the scale that way. And it might sound a carbon copy of this, that, or the other, but it's going to have some part of you that's in that. Now, I thought that answer was unique. I can agree to a certain degree, but I also feel that by learning other people's stuff, or at least intensely listening to other people's stuff and trying to mimic it, which is what I did for so many years. I didn't learn note for note other people's stuff when I first started. And when I was playing in bars and clubs when I was a little kid, because I didn't have a computer when I was a kid. A lot of my friends did. I didn't. And sure shit couldn't afford tab books and all this other stuff, but I could buy myself CDs. I did listen to the radio. And one of the things that was super important for me to do with the teacher that I had for, 9 months or whatever it was developing my ear. And like a lot of players that I eventually looked up to, what they would do is they would listen to the radio and listen to their records and at most maybe try to slow down their records and learn their stuff by ear. And what they ended up doing was they ended up learning everything wrong, all the fretting and all the picking and so on and so forth. But at the same time, by learning those things wrong, they developed their own style. They developed their own ways of doing it. And so I put both of those things together. You're going to be you, no matter if you play Mary Had a Little Lamb. You're going to play Mary Had a Little Lamb like you, regardless if you heard it like anyone else was playing it or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. The guitar is such a nuanced instrument, and it's the one instrument that I've never heard a plugin be able to replicate very well.
Right.
Because you can do fake drums or fake piano or fake orchestra and stuff, but guitar is so nuanced.
Yeah.
Tiny micro bends and just the fluidity and nuance on every string is so particular to every individual that I agree with what you're saying, that your voice is just going to naturally come through because you could play the same song as 10 other people and there's going to be 11 different versions of it.
Yeah.
That you're hearing just because people's skill set is different. The way people pick is different. The way people palm mute is different.
Absolutely.
The way people finger, it's all going to be different. So, yeah, I think I couldn't agree with you more about that.
Yeah, going to the going back to what you were saying about the bending or the little nuanced things. It's an integral part of my lesson time with people when they first sign on to do lessons with me. I usually it's so weird because I feel like I attract people like this because I was one and I still am one. I don't call people students, and I sure shit don't call myself a teacher. I don't have the qualifications to call myself a teacher. And I don't consider people students. I just have a bit of information and experience to at least share that or want to share that with people. And so I always seem to attract people who have a little bit of knowledge, have experience playing, but don't know really where to go from there. And they've tried other means of, or other forms of lessons, and it's not hitting the mark for them. It's not, theory-based stuff is just so soulless to them, or whatever it is, and they come to me. And I always feel like I attract those types of people because I'm one of those types of people. Now, I've tried my hardest throughout the years to learn the way that I do, and try to get into a way of thinking where I apply the things that I know with, learning bits of theory, learning bits of this, learning bits of that, and always constantly learn. And I always start my lessons out with people, or my sessions, I like to call them, by saying, I'm going to tell you a bunch of things, and I'm going to show you a bunch of things. But at the same time, I just want you to know that there's no right or wrong, that what we're doing here is art. At some point in time, Dali painted a painting, Picasso painted a painting, and there were people in their fields, in their respective fields, who thought it was absolute trash and the wrong thing to do. And they did it anyway. And I was like, it's the reason Slayer exists. I was like, Slayer exists for a reason. You know what I mean? There's a million people out there who are going to say that the leads are trash, or that this is this and all this other stuff, but they have millions upon millions upon millions of fans who say otherwise. And, those guys don't have to work any job ever again. They're highly successful and influential, and they might have done things wrong, but it worked for them. It's their art. And I always say that to people, that I'm going to tell you some things, and there's going to be right ways of doing it or thinking about it. In a harmony sense, it's going to sound more pleasing to play these notes as opposed to these notes, minor, sure, major, this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And what modes to apply to certain chords, and what scales to apply to certain keys, so on and so forth. But at the same time, this is about you. This is about your individual voice. This is putting your fingers on a fretboard to express yourself and what you want to be. And I always say, when I start to get into the vibrato part, the vibrato side of stuff, because there's a lot of people who hit me up and they're like, oh man, you're vibrato. And I'm like, dude, this is the most important part of playing guitar ever. And at least that's the way I think. I was like, this is the most important thing. This is the coolest thing the guitar does. It's the most important part. It sets apart from everything else an instrument can do, because this part, I can put my hands on the fretboard, on the strings, and play notes in a sequence super fast. And that's cool. And I love hearing people do that. And I love doing it myself. But nothing's going to set me apart, and my actual heart and soul does not leap out of me into this fretboard until I start bending those strings.
Yeah, and there's so much nuance and harmonic overtones and soul and emotion and feeling.
I'm
and
like,
there's so much of that in a bend that you
right.
can't get with a fucking note that you don't wiggle.
Exactly. I always say that to people when we start to get into the vibrato side of things. I'm like, that is your actual soul coming out. That is your heart. That is your emotion. That's you coming out. And that's what separates the guitar from everything else. I know a lot of other things can start to bend pitch and all this other stuff, but with a guitar, this is how we're able to do it. You can play chords all day special. Long. Yeah. So I always, going back to what you were saying, that related to all of that. So it's fun to do that stuff, man. I love to, I've like Jen and her family, when I'll start to talk about anything, because I have like a passion for a lot of stuff. They're like, Reece, I think you have a real knack for teaching. And I'm like, I don't know. I love at least being just given a little bit of I don't know, information and passion behind that to people who are passionate about the same things that I'm talking about, at least. Because I guess if I had to teach anything and I didn't like it, then I would fail, of course. But I love showing people how to play guitar.
Yeah, it's really fun in anything, I think, to teach someone about something that they're interested in that you also love.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun,
especially
man.
if they're going to give you money for your time to do that.
Oh, dude,
that's a pretty good way to make a buck.
It is, and it's super rewarding. Rewarding not for the money's sake, but when I actually see these people apply anything that I show them. When I see people like do it, or when people have those like epiphanies, like those aha moments where they're applying stuff and they see, like I see it through the screen. I'll see them go, where is it? I'll see them actually do it. Man, it almost makes me cry, man. Like, it's so fucking cool to see people actually get something out of it. And it's it's super rewarding. And like, whenever I do lessons with people, I always try to make it as worth their dollar as I can. Like, they can contact me at any moment. They can email me, they can DM me, they can do anything, ask me any question they want. I'll send tabs, I'll send videos, and I stay on extra time. I try to make it as worthwhile as possible because I still have the mindset that I can't believe that people even want to do this, with me. So I'm grateful for it, and it's a lot of fun too. So
hell yeah. Yeah, and when talking about the bends, and that's how your soul comes out. There are a couple of things that could kind of prevent someone's soul from coming out properly with the bends. A, you need strong hands.
Yeah.
And B, like if your strings are too heavy, even if your hands are strong, dude, those bends are not going to come out the way you want them to.
Yeah, you're totally right, man. You're totally right.
But that's a case of the guitar fighting you instead of working with you.
Exactly.
Where you play a little bit lighter strings than I do, and when I play your guitars, I'm like, oh, no wonder your
flying.
vibrato's so great. Like, these things are so nice to bend. Yeah. It's only a 10% difference on like our high E string. You're playing 9s, I'm playing 10s.
Yeah.
But that 10% of difference in thickness of the string makes a huge difference in how easy it is to bend.
It does make a big difference. Big difference. But you got a right pick hand that would go through fucking steel. So,
I do it all the time. I'm string breaker.
Yes, my pick hand. I always play rhythms, and I always work on rhythms, and I have a right hand that can be heavy, but I also have lead guitar player mind where if it's got to be any sort of intricate or fast, I'm going to naturally lighten up. And so if I've got to be heavy, it's going to be heavy. But if I've got to go quick, or if I got to do something that's intricate, I'm going to lighten up. So, that's the way my right hand works. I'm not going to I know some people who I call friends, who, dude, I just don't understand how they fucking if they played one of my guitars, they would break every string just with one hit. And I'm like, dude, I don't know if that's the right thing to do. Like, tone is cool. I get where you're coming from, but that's a little excessive. It's not a drum set. It's a guitar, but it works for them. So
yeah, that's one thing I notice between our string gauges is, when I'm going to bend a note on the high E, like I gotta fucking be juiced and like, here we go.
Yeah, you gotta work for it.
Yeah, for sure. Especially back in the day when we were in standard tuning 440 with the 10s on the high end. Fuck, man. Especially like bending the 22 up to a high E, like gnarly. It takes a lot of muscle to get that thing up there.
Or you're recording and need to do multiple takes.
I don't know.
Nah. I've got my TBZ. I've got my TBZ and standard tuning because Monolith is doing standard tuning, E440. And no, man, like all of Time Is Up. When I hear you do a lead, there's a lot of leads that have a high bend, and I'm like, I know he did multiple takes of that, and sometimes I'm like, his fingers must have been hurting after that session, because I know he did multiple takes of that shit. And that, back in the day, we were tuned to E, and fuck, man.
Yeah, and all of my solos on Time Is Up are double tracked.
Yeah, double tracked. Yep.
And even, listening back to that stuff, I think this is always going to happen, especially when you're a teenager versus how old we are now. But I listen back to Time Is Up and I'm like, fuck, I could have played that so much better. I've played it better than it is on the record live 100 times.
Yeah.
And that goes with a lot of different things, a lot of different parts of songs. But it is what it is. I guess the good side of that is just knowing that I've gotten better at playing guitar.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, man. With Time Is Up, when I listen to Time Is Up, or Point of No Return and Unnatural Selection, it's not so much I could have played it better. I'm just why did I play that? And I think that's the mindset I'm in now. I didn't start taking a turn, even though I feel like when I listen back to old stuff, I'm like, man, that's cool. That's really cool. And I'm the type of person who goes back and listens to I'll listen to us all the time. I listen to V. We were having a discussion about this not too long ago, but I listen to V at least once a week. I listen to it. I listen to Havok stuff or even Monolith stuff just to check up to see if I'm crazy and thinking that it was cool. You know what I mean? I don't know if you ever do that, but
I understand.
Yeah. I go back for it just to see if am I shot? Was what I was listening to back in the day, or when I recorded this, or a week after I recorded this, or a week after its release, is it still cool or is it not cool? And I'll listen to it and be like, oh, it's cool. This is cool. So yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. When I listen back to our old stuff, there's a lot of parts that still make me excited and go yeah. Oh yeah. Which is a good thing that we haven't aged terribly, that'd be.
Yeah. I agree.
Not very good feeling, but I do feel that way sometimes about some of my very, very, very old lyrics. Oh my God, what was I saying? Oh yeah, that's right. I was 15 when I wrote this song.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I was a fucking, sophomore in high school when I wrote this.
People aren't going to get that perspective. They're not going to get that other side of the story,
Yeah, for sure. They're just going to hear it and be like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? which is fine. It's a matter of public record at this point. We're the ones that put the stuff out. So whatever. 'Tis what it is.
Yeah.
But I have one last question that I wanted to ask you from a Patreon person, and then that's it for all the questions.
Okay, cool.
This one says, awesome playing on all the Havok albums. I agree with this man. Or woman, or Zimzer. I'm not sure.
Well, thank you, genderless being.
Okay, it says, Evil is coming out with their first album in 8 years this April. So for the sake of being topical, and due to the fact that they've been my favorite band for about 7 years, I have to ask, what is your relationship with the band? I.e., when did you first discover / start listening to them, and how long have you been acquainted with the guitarist / now vocalist of the band, Old Drake? Thanks for all the amazing music. Cannot wait for the next Havok release.
I had never really known the dude until social media brought us together, and just like anything else, social media has brought us together, and we were able to talk about guitars and all this other stuff, and he's been a very, very, very nice person to me, and has said very, very flattering things that I just don't understand, because he's so damn good.
Yeah, he's a fucking ripper, dude. Some of the Evil solos are fucking insane.
And
I remember hearing
rhythms,
some of them
too.
for the first time and just being like, Jesus Christ. He's going to melt the frets off of the fucking guitar.
Yeah, the lead playing is amazing, and the rhythm guitar playing is just ferocious. It's great.
It's insane right-hand stuff.
They got great tones, too. I always really like the sound of their guitars. That's as far as being acquainted with them and knowing them and stuff. Yeah, I always really liked what they had done. I think the minute it came out, well, not the minute it came out, it was, Friday, I guess. I woke up for work. I wake up very early for work, and it had been out. And I listened to the track and thought it was super cool. And I don't think they're going to skip a beat with Ole being the vocalist. It's a different approach. It's a more aggressive approach for vocals, which I think is pretty cool. And yeah, man, they seem to be ramping up, and I hope there's a point in time where we can get through all this COVID stuff and get to a point where we could at least play some shows, because I'd really like to play some shows with those dudes.
Yeah, same here. So when did you first hear about Evile? Because I've been aware of them since probably 2004 or 05.
Yeah, I would say it was somewhere around that same time too. Funny enough, when I found Evile, I also found Havok. It might have been a little tiny bit later, maybe a couple years after I graduated high school when I found all this stuff out. I was still listening to, the newest stuff that I was listening to was like Shadows Fall and, like heavier stuff, and getting into like, not getting into, but, getting the new Bodum release or getting the new Demo release or getting the new Decapitated record or, and then on the other side of the spectrum, like listening to, or getting the newest Malmsteen record, or I don't know. I was listening to a bunch of stuff like that, and then I found that people were playing thrash metal, like 100% thrash, not thrashy elements, not like a thrashy Swedish death metal type thing. It was solely thrash metal music, and it was Evile. I saw Havok, and then I saw a bunch of other poser type stuff out there with like some dudes who were like super into looking the part and who were like pretty boys who like played Flying V's. I was like, what the fuck's this all about? And it was on MySpace. So
and it was Havok, right?
Yes. I found both Evile and Havok, and I was like, what the fuck? People are playing thrash metal. And I thought this was cool. So I was a fan of both bands maybe around that time, and funny enough, here we are all these years later through MySpace.
Yeah, crazy. I remember discovering Evile, and they had Enter the Grave and some other songs on there way back in the day. And I remember when Havok first started and we first had our very first recordings, Evile was one of the only bands that was around that was a newer, younger thrash band that I could find.
Right.
They were one of the, like, I could count them all on one hand when we first started, and Evile was one of them. So I've known about those guys for a long time, and that's super cool that you were aware of Evile and Havok, and now here we are on the calendar 10 years into you being in the band.
Yeah, man, it's wild, dude. It's really wild.
We've seen a lot of shit.
Time moves fast, and it's crazy. I had always when I first joined the band, for the longest time I had always had this mindset of like, shit, like I don't know, because I just didn't know. Like it was such a big leap for me, and Pete, it was in a similar boat. Like we were from the East Coast, I was from the southern half, and he's from the Northeast, but we both come from so far away, joining a band where we don't know anyone, and then we're going to try to make this. We're just going to try to make this the thing that we always wanted to be, which is a very wild concept. Like,
yeah, it's a pretty huge shot in the dark, and hats off to both of you guys for being down to do it. Being down to move 2,000 miles away and be like, I guess we'll fucking give this a shot.
Well, on the other side of the spectrum, it's like, I couldn't believe that people would want to have me in their house. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know, like...
All of Havok lived in my house for a long time. We had band members living in and out of my house for fucking a decade.
Yeah, yeah. And it was just, every part about it was so wild. And I just, for the longest time, I was like, at least that the initial, like, first 2 months that I was in the band, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. And here we are 10 years later.
Yeah, here we are 10 years later. You got to hook up with Dean and Seymour Duncan and PV amps, and We've been to probably 70 countries or something like that.
Something crazy like that.
It's pretty crazy. Yeah, I remember when you joined, Time Is Up was virtually all finished.
Right.
It just needed solos and maybe a couple of vocal parts. And, we got that thing wrapped up and relentlessly toured for the next 10 years, basically. Mm-hmm. 8 years.
Yeah.
But crazy shit. Yeah, I told Pete, I'm pretty convinced that time accelerates.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We know what it takes as older people. It's kind of like when you're a smaller person, everything back when you were tiny was fucking huge.
A huge chunk of your life was a year, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, like physically everything, you're small, so everything's gigantic. Sure. But time, but time is the same way. Like a car ride to go to the store seemed like it took forever. And
totally.
you anticipated this huge trip across town, and as older people, like I get through a week in the blink of an eye, and I don't even know where the fucking time went. And I get through a month in the blink of an eye, and I don't even know where the fucking time went, because I know every single day is jam packed with something. Every single week's jam packed with something. It takes a fraction of a hair of a second for that to flash by. Most of what happens in adult life is shit you don't want to do. So you're wishing for it to go by, or you're hoping for it to go by without any hiccups. And then by the time that happens, everything else is done too, and you're down a year. And it does accelerate. Being an older person, we know what is, what to anticipate and how things go. So our sense of time is very narrow. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller. As when we were younger people, it just seemed like an eternity to get to the fucking grocery store. It's weird. It's wild.
Yeah, I remember that. Sometimes we would go from, our place when we were kids downtown to go to a Colorado Rockies baseball game.
Right.
And the drive is 20 minutes or something. And as a little kid, it felt like, oh, fuck, like this is going to take all day. It felt like it was an hour. But, it's 18 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
But as a little kid, your perception of time is so different from ours.
Yeah.
And it slips away from you. So we have to enjoy our lives while we can, because it's very short and obviously can end at any time. Is there any place that we haven't been that you really want to go to on tour?
Yeah. Well, I want to go to New Zealand.
New Zealand, yeah, me too.
I want to go to New Zealand, and I want to go to, well, number one overall, I want to go to Alaska. I want to go to Alaska really bad. I just think it's so cool. I just think it's so crazy. Like, I think the nature is so weird. Not weird. I think it's awesome. I think the people who chose to go there so many years ago and live, I think the American people who were born in the lower 48, who eventually went there to live and never looked back. I think that's a wild concept, and
totally is. Yeah.
I think that's so cool. And I have a fascination with Alaska and, how isolated some parts of it can be and all that stuff. It's like a reverse desert.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I think that's the only state we've not been to.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that we've played in every state, but we've definitely driven through every state minus Alaska.
Yeah, exactly. And I definitely want to go there and play.
New Zealand and Alaska sound both great to me. I'd like to go to Alaska in the summertime when the sun never goes down instead of in the wintertime.
Yeah,
Maybe the second time to Alaska will go in the winter.
I don't want to go in the wintertime just because I feel that it would be kind of hairy to even get in and out of Alaska with the weather, because the weather's so crazy there. So yeah. I feel that a summer trip would be the smoothest, but I would love to go there. There are places that we've only been once that I would love to go back to.
Such as? Which one?
Japan, for one. I feel that being what I'm into and being what I was into even then, I feel like I dropped the ball with so much that I had chose to do there, or at least try to find to do, because at the time we went, I was pretty sick. I got a sinus infection or something, and I was just down and out. We went from places in Southeast Asia that were close to the equator, where it was 80 or 90 some degrees, to Japan and China and stuff like that, where it was winter time because it was the northern hemisphere. And I just remember my whole system, like everything just kind of just said, what the fuck? And I remember when we had landed, it was cool to be in Japan. We got some dinner, but then we were in the Tokyo airport for 8 or 10 hours sleeping in the airport.
Yeah, we were there for a long fucking time.
Yeah.
I can't remember what we were waiting for or why we were waiting, but I do remember being in Narita Airport for way, way, way too long.
We were waiting for our tour manager / promoter to pick us up, and I think his availability after picking up the rest of the bands, it couldn't happen until 8 or 10 hours later or something like that. Then after we get out of the airport, we have to jam all of our gear into a couple cars. Then after that, we have to hike all of our gear.
Oh, yes. I remember that, March.
You remember that?
Oh, my God, dude. Yeah, we had to schlep our gear, legitimately, probably a mile and a half, maybe 2 miles.
Yeah.
Heavy-ass guitars and, all of the merch and, all of our shit, our luggage, everything. 2 miles or something.
Because boys and girls, check this out. For people who are now benefiting from the wonder that is Inky cases, we did not have those and decided that it was a really amazing idea to bolt 2 guitar cases together and carry them like that across Southeast Asia and Europe many times. And
still was a good idea.
Still was a good idea.
Day. That day was not fun.
That day was not fun. And it's you hear 1.5, 2 miles, and you're like, oh, that's no big deal. We're carrying 2 guitar cases stuck together, all of our lives on our back, for 5 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever it was. And then something else heavy in the other hand, like a big pedal board or Pete cymbals or something like that. And it was a little much. When you're an international touring band, and in your mind, you're hoping that you throw all your stuff into some sort of Sprinter van or some sort of van and go to the venue or go to a hotel. And
walk it 40 feet into the hotel lobby, and that's it.
And that's it. And sometimes it is like that. A lot of times it is like that when you're traveling international. But a lot of times it's not. And that was one of the times. It wasn't. And after that, we had arrived at the promoter's house, which I guess he didn't spend a lot of time there, so his heat was out. And like I said,
I remember it was fucking cold in there.
And like I said, we had been going to places where we had just played in Thailand and Singapore, which Thailand and Singapore were both warm. Then from
Malaysia, and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, Malaysia, and it was warm outside and humid. And then from there, we go to Japan, and it's 35, 40 degrees outside, and it was my body was all kinds of fucked up. And it was wild, dude. It was real wild, but one of those things I'll never forget. But
we have a lot of stories like that, man. There's a lot of those stories that I remember them. As soon as you brought it up, I knew exactly what you were talking about. But when I think about Japan, or I think about this place or that place, those are the things that my brain tuned out and rejects from memory. So when I think of these places, I remember them oh, that was super cool. We got to go to that place. Because, I remember those things, but my brain's we're going to
you don't need that
way in the, storage locker way back there.
You don't need that anymore.
Yeah, you don't need that one. Yeah, we have tons of those stories, and you'll have to come on some other time, and we'll have to talk about more tour stories, because God knows we could go on and on with those. And you have a very good memory for a lot of these things. You bring up stuff sometimes, and I'm like, oh, fuck, I haven't thought of that in like 5 years.
So I know this is a podcast in which you have guests on, and you ask questions, and we kind of riff back and forth, but I actually had a couple questions for you.
Yeah, hit me.
I definitely have answers to these questions too, but I wanted to get your kind of input or your opinion on these things, because I've been wanting to ask people these things for a while, and it definitely it not better suited for a person that I'm actually in a band with. So my first question is, say there's some sort of situation where COVID ends tomorrow, or, restrictions on people traveling. Things can happen. Life can go back to normal. All of our booking agents, bands, everything magically, touring happens again.
Yeah.
We can literally go on tour tomorrow, and magically our booking agents and management have a tour for us tomorrow because they anticipated it for some odd reason. I don't know about you, but I feel I've aged 20 years. And no exaggeration, I feel I've aged 20 years in this whole time of COVID, in our COVID world.
Yeah.
And my question is, with all of our time off, and then tomorrow we can tour, if you're on a tour bus tomorrow, or you're in a venue, or we're on the road for a month, what is your mindset? What are you doing different? How are you now living on tour? What would you do?
Different than I used to?
Yeah, like are you still behaving the same way? Are you still thinking the same way? Are you still, eating the same things, drinking the same things, reading the same things, so on and so forth? Like, what has this whole time in COVID, in our COVID world, and your experiences this past year, what has that done that would change you and your touring life?
One thing that I might do is I've hung out with and met a lot of really cool people, and I was in the moment hanging out with them, that I consciously didn't say like, hey, let's stop this great conversation so we can take a picture. Smile.
Right. Yeah.
That's something that I might do if touring came back, is like document things
Prosperity.
better, because we do a lot of really cool shit, but I don't have like evidence of a lot of it.
Right.
So that's something that I may do differently, is document things a little bit more. I might shake people's hands and then lick my palm just to make sure I get a little bit of immunity.
Yeah.
But, if we were on tour, I think I would probably try to make an effort to go eat dinner or lunch or whatever at a mom and pop place. Figure out who's got good food in the area and go pay them a visit and give them $15 for a meal so that they don't shut down. I would try to make sure that every show I'm delivering 1,000% of what I'm capable of.
Right.
And not phoning it in or taking it for granted. Because, sometimes on tour, you're still very into it and shit. You have to be to play Havok stuff. It's not a walk in the park.
No.
It's very demanding music, and you need to be pepped up and have energy.
Right.
But, there are times where I've been mentally, like, not all there, not all focused. Maybe it's because of a lack of sleep, or maybe being hungover, or not eating the right thing, or whatever. But that's something that I would definitely be more conscious of. Make sure that I'm putting proper biological fuel into my body.
Yeah.
Not getting all fucked up. Not that I've ever had a huge problem with that anyways, but I would just be trying to present the best possible form of Havok that's ever existed, because we're not getting any younger, we're not getting any better looking,
Right.
and I would want to present ourselves on a higher platform to make people walk away from the show with their brains all over the ground.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Holy shit, that was the coolest thing I ever saw.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
What about you? What would you do differently on tour if it picked right back up?
Well, that, like I said, I feel like I've aged 20 fucking years, and I wouldn't say in a bad way. I just feel, of course things would change and I would get used to longer nights as opposed to earlier mornings like I do now. But, I'm naturally a morning person. And so my nights would end early. My nights spent hanging out, my nights spent hanging out, not rested up and not bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for the next day. That would probably end. I would try to get a good night's sleep every single night now. And this whole time I've realized that now when I wake up even after having one drink of alcohol, I feel it the next day. Mm-hmm. And so I've reduced that to days in which I don't have much going on, which by the time I get to the point in the night and the next day is a Saturday and it's the weekend and I can sleep in or something like that, I'm too tired to even have a sip of alcohol, so I just don't do it. And I've severely, drastically, I should say, reduced my alcohol intake, and that's something that I would do way different. Practice, even though I was never seen without a guitar on tour, it would be even more so. Yeah, I mean, basically along the lines of that, I feel that also my mental capacity, my situational awareness, my physical being, all of it's a lot stronger than it was. And with the mental side of things is I'm less likely, even more so than I was when we were touring, I'm less likely to deal with any sort of funny business or bullshit. That my tolerance for fuckery is at an all-time low, and I am quicker to just completely shut it down these days because I have zero time to tolerate it. But in a mature way, and a way that can be adult and productive, as opposed to deconstructive and combative or whatever.
Yeah, I understand what you mean.
But yeah, I would be more of like an old man. I would be more like an old man on tour these days. That's exactly it.
In hey, you guys are wasting time and fucking around. Knock that shit off. Is that what you mean?
No. I mean, just for me personally, I would never tell anyone what they should or shouldn't do. I mean, for me, what I would do, as far as, and what I mean by tolerance for bullshit, if bullshit was in my face, or if there was a situation where I thought it was completely unacceptable, or it was just something that just could not, something that was going nowhere. These days, I'm quicker to go, knock it the fuck off, or get it the fuck out of my face, or stop it. This is not right. This is not productive. This is not positive. This is not this. This is not that. Quit it, or I'm out of here. That sort of thing.
And that awareness is a good thing.
Yeah.
You're going to save a lot of time and heartache.
Yeah, exactly. But as far as what I would do personally, my mindset and how I would regiment things a lot more. I would be I would want to be up early in the morning. I would want to be a bit more physical. I would want to get a lot more sleep, reduce alcohol intake. That's the stuff that would change 100% from times before. I never really did stay up all hours of the night, and I did wake up really early already, but it probably would be even more so these days. But yeah,
sure.
Like an old man. So
Yeah. Get down to business. We're not here to fuck around, gentlemen.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I get it. Totally get it. So you had other questions, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, hit me.
So this kind of gets into philosophy and some things that I've heard you say in the past that I always thought that was pretty cool. And it relating to psychedelics and relating to the positive mind altering substances where you can squash ego.
Yeah.
And the importance of squashing the ego. And I always thought that was really cool. But I'm the type of person who, at the end of the day, it's with myself more than anything else. But I've always been competitive. And I've always been competitive, and I wouldn't say comparing. I'm not saying like in a girl's way where it's like, she's got that dress, fuck her type of thing. But like, I mean, like, this dude's chops are great, man. I've got to step my game up. Like when Jack Black talks about like Kobe used to go, he would learn Texas two-step if it meant his game was better or whatever. Like he would, a competitive nature, but a healthy competitive nature, at least in my mind.
Sure.
In a sense of ego in which you have that in yourself, your confidence to better your position or better your craft. Do you feel that a healthy competition and ego, do those words in a positive way ever creep into your mind or your speech or whatever, even while trying to keep all that stuff at bay?
Yeah, for sure. I think striving to be a better version of yourself is definitely a worthwhile venture, whether that's in your craft or in your art or in your, physical capabilities or whatever it is. Bettering yourself in some way, shape, or form, I don't think is necessarily an egotistical thing to do. I think that's a fairly, stoic thing to do. And, the Stoics were very against ego and basically bettering yourself. I think there's a big difference between bettering yourself and having some sense of accomplishment and having a false sense of a grand ego. A lot of people that have on the surface really big egos actually have very fragile, small egos.
Oh, 100%.
But they inflate it.
Yes.
To make it seem like, they're bigger and tougher and stronger or whatever it is. But, if you actually like scratch beyond the surface, the person has a very low opinion of themselves and they tend to balloon out their chest and act like they're
be all puffed
super
up.
badass.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like peacocking, basically.
Yeah.
And I think there's a big difference between bettering yourself and having a big ego and being like an egomaniac and super vain and into yourself. I think there's a pretty stark difference between those two things. I think that you can commit egocide and not have a big ego and not be super into yourself and be the best at something.
Okay, so like what I'm saying is if I had watched Michael Jordan describe everything he described in the documentary series.
I haven't seen it yet. I need to see it. But yeah, go ahead.
I didn't see it either. I know a lot about what went into it, and I had researched a lot of stuff that went into it. Also was, it's just one of those things for me. If I get into a topic, it doesn't matter what it is. I'm looking at a salt lamp here. I'm going to look up salt lamps, and I want to know everything about salt lamps. Like that's just the way I am.
Yeah,
I've researched and looked up so much stuff about Michael Jordan in the past, and had already known these things that, on the surface before this documentary came out, everybody thought that, Jordan was like this sweet, even keel type baller.
Right.
When in fact, he's a fucking sociopath who is a super competitive person and will do anything to win. But it wasn't negative. And I think, not to say that it was the most positive, and some of the ways he explains things, how he was positioned, how I wouldn't say treated people. I mean, I guess treated people, but what that inevitably did for not just himself, but his teammates, the organization, a legacy, the game, everything, his family, all this stuff benefited from his mindset. I would almost like for you to see the documentary or to know that about him and say, okay, is what he describes himself or describes the situations as a positive thing? Does that creep into anything that we talk about or what we do? That competitive nature that pushes things, forward.
Yeah, I haven't seen the documentary, so I can't speak to anything about the Michael Jordan thing specifically.
I mean, like if you were taking that mentality the way that he had it, or anyone like that, because I mean, a lot of those types of guys had that type of mentality, and you were just placing it into like our lives. Like, is that something that you could be like, okay, I could see where that could be necessary to push the needle?
Well, like I said, I think that being competitive and becoming the best version of oneself doesn't necessarily have to be holding hands with having a big ego. I think you can definitely still have a small ego and, like I said, still be the very best at something.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that are insanely talented in their field, but they're super genuinely humble and don't think they're that special, but they're fucking like gods in their field.
Yeah.
These people do exist. They're more rare than not.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of people out there that are, they're aware that they're a fucking ultimate super badass, but they don't act like they are, I guess. And I guess I'm just saying that you can have a competitive nature where the competition is not to outdo the other person, but to better yourself.
Yeah.
And I think there is a healthy way to be competitive with yourself,
right,
without blowing up your head and about your successes or about your achievements.
Yeah, okay.
Interesting question, but I need to watch that Michael documentary, the Michael Jordan one, and circle back to this sometime when we can talk again.
Yeah, I always thought I've got a competitive nature, and my dad's got a competitive nature, and my dad is more competitive than I am. And it never translated in sports because when I was playing sports, I didn't care about sports. I didn't care about sports at all. Mm-hmm. I didn't start caring about sports until I was well into playing guitar, and then I really cared about sports. And I still do. But that competitive nature in my dad went over into me because my dad is the type of person to be competitive with a person, to be competitive with society, or, to be competitive, like that sort of thing. I always thought that was a negative way to look at those things because I didn't see anything getting done in that. I didn't see, for one, a positive in it. And I didn't see anything where having that type of competitive mind frame got anything done in the first place because it never materialized.
Well, if you're competing, like I said, to better yourself, and that's something that your long-term goal is, I think that's a worthy investment of time. I think the big difference that's meaningful, at least to me, is if you're competing against someone else, let's say you're a runner and you're trying to be the fastest person in the world, but this other guy always beats you. Well, if you keep training until you're the guy that beats him and you're the fastest person, you shouldn't look at your achievement of becoming the fastest person as, not worth something and not something to relish in and, appreciate and love about yourself. I think the big difference is where if the competition with the other person is all about getting yourself into a better place by squashing and crushing the other person, I think that's where it can become toxic and negative, when it becomes more about destroying the other person instead of getting yourself to be better at whatever the goal is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
100%.
You know, like if you're the best at something, as long as the goal is not to destroy the other, but it's about being the best at it. I mean, once you're the best at it, I think you should have every right, and it makes perfect sense to really soak that in and find appreciation. Like, holy shit, I did this. Like, that's amazing. I think that's more important than trying to say, like, yeah, fuck that guy.
Yeah, where I was getting with it when I was talking to about my dad is I had saw those things with my dad and his competitive nature at the time. And I was a kid, and I was just starting to play guitar. And then I started to get better at guitar, and I started to be in bands and stuff like this. Mm-hmm. And I took that, and I would be like, that doesn't seem like it's the right way of thinking or the right way to do this. And so my competitive nature became more about competing with myself. If I don't have this lick down by this time, well, then I'm just not good enough. I've got to have it down by at least this time. Or I've got to have this whole song down by at least the end of the day. Or I've got to have this whole set learned by the end of this week. And setting goals and being super competitive with myself and seeing that type of competition and carrying that type of competitive spirit in me was a super positive way of looking at something like that. And then being wrapped up in myself in a competitive way with the ego factor coming in. And that was basically my question is like, I've always thought my competitive nature dipped into an ego side of things, but in a way that would springboard me into the position that I am in now. Or I wouldn't say springboard. It wasn't exactly a hop, skip, and a jump to get here, but at least put me in a position as to where I am right now. And it still fuels me. The question was looking at everything in that way is that would be a positive as opposed to like, because, I always really loved your concept, and I know it's not your concept, but it's a concept you continue to talk about and carry on the philosophy of, because I've heard other people talk about it, and, different philosophical people throughout history talk about squashing ego and benefiting from that. But I always thought that was really cool. I always thought that was a really cool way of thinking about it. Like, get rid of that shit because it's not about you. The universe doesn't revolve around you. You're just a part of a very, very endless amount of crazy shit. You're not even a little speck in the sand of the beach.
Right. Well, that recognition is makes it a lot easier to commit egocide on a daily basis. But yeah, I think that it is totally possible, though, to better yourself, like you're saying, compete with yourself and come out victorious against the old version of you.
Right.
I think that's entirely possible to do that without having necessarily an inflated ego or getting a big ego or seeing yourself as like ultra important. I think you can appreciate your own accomplishments.
Right.
Without it turning into conceit. I think that's definitely possible. Like I said, there's some people that are the greatest ever at what they do, and they're super humble, and they don't have a giant chip on their shoulder. They're just, whatever, I just do what I do. But everyone else sees them, and they're like, Jesus Christ, like, you're amazing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of stuff like that. And anytime I watch videos of behind-the-scenes stuff, and see shit with like Dimebag Darrell, he seems like that kind of a guy. He's one of the best guitar players that ever lived, and he seems like, whatever, it's just a thing. I'm like, no, you're one of the best guitar players that ever lived, and he's just like, whatever, man, check this out. He like, brushes it off.
Yeah.
And he's a good example of one of those types of people, I think, where he outdoes himself. He's in competition with himself to be better than he was yesterday or 10 years ago or whatever.
Yeah,
but he does that all without being like, look at me, I'm the fucking shit, man.
Yeah, totally.
And I find that incredibly attractive with anybody that's, can like just hang that up and be like, whatever. Just like be laid back about stuff. Yeah. Everybody else can see you're the shit. Right. You don't need to like walk around telling people that you are.
Yeah, exactly.
It's advertising it,
It's no different than, telling everybody you're tough and that you can kick their asses probably means that you can't do that at all, and that you're not tough at all. It's like the giant truck, small dick thing.
Yeah. Did you have any other questions as well?
I have one other question.
Yeah, hit me. I've got a couple more for you.
Okay, cool. We're taking a completely. We're going off the rails with this one a little bit.
Oh, cool. I can't wait.
Okay, so being that you have a podcast and a merch company that kind of revolves around this phrase and revolves around this symbol, I want to see where you're at with the hijacking of historical images and their meaning, and kind of enlighten people what some of these images mean to you, because I know that it's a sore subject for me because people aren't educated enough to at least do a little bit of research and figure out exactly what these things mean, but now they automatically mean negative things. So with Riffs or Die, the join or die snake, the flag, the so on and so forth. We've got the Gadsden flag, the Don't Tread on Me, and other related U.S. historical images that are now synonymous with extreme right-leaning ways
Crazy
of thinking.
people. Yeah.
Ways of thinking. And I just wanted to get your take on all of that.
Well, I call the thing Riffs or Die, and I've been saying it since even before it was a company or I've made the podcast or t-shirts or anything like that. We made a Havok Riffs or Die shirt once upon a time.
Yep.
But yeah, I hijacked the join or die snake that's from this old flyer from the Revolutionary War that was drawn up by Benjamin Franklin. And the reason I did that is because I'm way into the idea of revolting against an oppressive government. A lot of our lyrics kind of touch on that.
I meant other people are taking the images for their own political agendas, as meaning hijack, not you hijacked in a negative way. Okay,
no,
sorry.
I'm just explaining to people because a lot of people hit me up and they see someone wearing like a coffee or die shirt or a join or die flag that they see in some documentary, and they're like, "Oh, dude, check it out! They're stealing your logo." I'm like, "No, I stole that image.
Right?
It's a really old, ancient relic about the United States, the original colonies overthrowing the greatest army the world had ever seen. It's a powerful image in my mind, and it stuck out in my head since I was a teenager. I always thought that was so cool. And other people hijacking images and changing them into something else. Can you give me an example?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't say hijacking the images, but I wouldn't say that they're hijacking the images for their own gain. Mm-hmm. I guess politically they are for their own gain. And, I would say the hijacking in an uneducated manner and labeling it XYZ, hijacking it, not taking it for their own, but using it against, hijacking in the way that it now means something that it never meant in the first place.
Okay, and like what? Can you give me an example?
Well, the join or die flag, the Gadsden flag, the
Gadsden flag?
Yeah, the 13 colonies flag, now it's all synonymous with extreme right-wing QAnon, drain the swamp type shit.
Sure, and people that say or want to drain the swamp, I don't see what the problem is with that.
Right.
People that are against anyone who agrees with the idea of drain the swamp. Yes, Trump said it, made it famous, but if you're not down with draining the swamp in Washington D.C., well, I mean, do you just love how politics work in this country? Do you love all the corruption and stuff? But yeah, I think the Gadsden flag is a really interesting one. Obviously, it's a snake. It's the snake that's on Metallica's Black Album.
Yes.
But it's the Don't Tread on Me flag that's yellow and it has a snake. It's a rattlesnake with its tail up, ready to bite and attack. And that Don't Tread on Me flag, I agree with you. It's been used as a political punch.
Yeah.
anyone that's waving that flag, and that flag represents, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me because you're fucked up and corrupt, and I love freedom and I love liberty and I believe in those things. Get out of my life. I don't need government to tell me that I'm allowed to do things.
Right.
As long as I'm not infringing on other people's rights. That's basically what the flag means.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's been associated now with, like you said, far right-wing radicals. Mm-hmm. And it's a fucking total mind-blower to me. It's a shame.
Yeah.
But it's pretty mind-blowing that flag is somehow viewed as like racist or offensive.
Yeah, I don't understand
that
it either.
flag means like, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. I love liberty. I love freedom. Get off my back, government, and, let the people do as they please and let them have their rights. That's what the flag stands for.
Right, yeah.
So when people get all bummed out about it or come down on it like it's got ties to racism or domestic terrorism or any of this shit, like, what the fuck are you people talking about? It's really insane. Jim Morrison was completely right when he said that who controls the media controls the mind, because the media has warped that flag into something that it's really not. And it's got, sadly, way too many millions of people thinking that flag equals racist, Trump supporter, homophobe.
Yeah.
Which is so stupid. The media has really brainwashed a lot of people into just becoming yes men for whatever the media wants to lie to people about.
Right. I agree.
People just gobble it right up,
Yeah, I agree. It's so wild. It's so insane to think, when you see something like that it just gets morphed into it. But then you have the people who fly it nowadays, or before nowadays, they were that. They were exactly what everybody's now talking about and synonymous with those images, to where it can never be, it's never going to go back to being seen the way it was originally intended. And it's a fucking shame. And that's what I mean by hijacked images. It's the taking of something now labeled something else, and now it is completely out of, the culture, it's canceled completely.
Yeah, for sure. It's propaganda that's sadly still working on people. The news tells you the Gadsden flag equals super religious, far right, Republican, racist, anti-abortion, capitalist.
Yeah.
But that's not what that flag necessarily represents. That just happens to be a lot of the people that are flying it.
Yeah, it's actually anti all that. If you think about it, it's literally...
Yes. It's like an anarchist flag, basically.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
replace the Gadsden flag with a fucking anarchy A symbol, and that's essentially the same fucking thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
literally
fuck government,
do not
let me do my own shit.
Right, yeah. Don't fuck with my shit. Don't fuck with me. Don't tread
on me.
Yeah, exactly. That's
exactly
what it is.
As it says. Yeah, and I do think it's interesting that you never see that flag being flown by anyone on the left side of the political spectrum, because typically a lot of people on the left, it appears to me, really like big government, and they want government to intervene and provide for them and be involved in people's lives more. So I kind of understand how it has become a flag that gets waved by only one side of the political spectrum. Generally, people on the right are like, fuck big government. Generally, people on the left are like, we need more government.
Yeah, exactly. Personally, I've got a few images or a few things that have that image on it because of what we had just talked about, because of what it at least means to me or meant to begin with. And of course, Metallica, that's where I loved Metallica when I was a little kid, getting that record, and then my dad explaining what that snake was and being like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then, knowing the history and stuff like that. And that's what it always had meant to me. And I'm a person who probably is more left of center than anything. And I'm not ashamed to say that. I'm more center. I wouldn't say left of center, but I would say I'm in the middle. But
most people are, yeah. Most people are in the middle.
I'm in the middle, but I swing left, but I don't want to be known as left or right or any of this shit. I'm just a person trying to fucking, live my life, a happy life, and try to be as successful as I possibly can with being creative and, trying to just get through life and not have it suck too much. And that's it.
Most people, man. Yeah, that's where most people live. And if you only watch the news, you'd be convinced that, 80% of the country is Democrats, hardcore left-wing people, and 20% of the country is hardcore right-wing people, and that's all that exists, where in reality, 80% of our country's population is like in the middle. Like neither side has like got all the answers, and we've been sold this fucked up lie that we only have two choices, and they're two wings of the same bird. It's really crazy where we are in this country, and the fact that there's basically one big party masquerading as two parties that's running everything. We've got songs that talk about this stuff and trying to urge people to like snap out of that paradigm, but I don't know if it's going to happen. And 10 years from now, Metallica's Black Album is going to be censored. They're going to have to redo the artwork.
Yeah.
And, I'm not looking forward to what else is going to come along with that kind of a mentality as a culture, a national culture,
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people, I don't know if this is something that you would edit or whatever. So I'm just going to say this off the top, but
yeah,
I wouldn't say a lot, but there's been a couple situations where I've seen online where our band has been accused of some of this stuff, over the course of the last month or so. And I saw this like bogus flyer of us, it was like Iced Earth, Havok, Trapped, Five Finger Death Punch or something like that. And I'm like, and it was
where'd you see that?
It was on Facebook. And
oh, wow.
Someone tagged me and Pete in it. It was it was a girl that used to work at Jack's, and her name's Marie. I think you remember her, but she tagged us and she was like, I don't know why you guys would be on there. And I'm like, at first I didn't pay too much of attention to it because like you and everyone else in the band, we get tagged in so much shit that I don't even pay attention to it. I just said, haha. But then I looked at it and I was like, wait, what the fuck? They're trying to label me and my bandmates as this far right leaning racist fucking, nationalist sort of thing. And I'm like, this isn't us. This isn't anything. What we don't, this isn't it at all. Like, I don't understand how you get that out of anything that you've ever written or anything
really funny
we've ever said. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, I think it's amusing, especially when like Hang 'em High came out and FPC came out, and then with the new record, when Post-Truth Era comes out and Fear Campaign comes out, and it's funny to me to read the comments, and some people are like, these guys are fucking right-wing conspiracy theorists, probably Trump supporters, and in the same thread, talking about the same lyrics, other people are like, these fucking libtards over here. Like, people can't figure it out, and because they seem to be stuck in this identity politics trap.
Yeah, it's got to be one or the other.
It's either you're a liberal or you're a right-winger conservative, instead of like, hey, we kind of don't check either of those boxes. And we think that whole system of calling each other out as Democrats and Republicans is fucking stupid and getting us nowhere. Actually, it is getting us somewhere. It's digging a deeper hole for us as a country. Yeah. But it's funny that we don't stand on either side of the aisle. When you read our lyrics, we're apolitical. We're anti-political. We're not a political band. We're like an anti-political band. And it's funny to read the comments and see people just missing the mark on trying to peg down exactly where we stand on things. And, to make it very simple for people, a lot of the Havok lyrics, I write them, and where I stand on them is maximum freedom. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan of the idea that we should be allowed to have individual liberty and do whatever we please, as long as we're not infringing on the rights of other people. Right. And, a lot of people call me a lot of crazy things and names, for that ideology being the fuel for a lot of Havok lyrics. But if you can't get behind freedom and liberty, then I don't know. We're just not speaking the same language.
And it's not solely a United States of American way of thinking. It's not.
Humanity.
It's humanity. It's so weird. I have a very hard time being rah-rah U.S. Like, I have a very hard time with it. I've always had a very hard time with it. Ever since I was a little kid. Like, it's hard for me to break out of that and be, when people go, these Bill of Rights and the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and I'm like, all that stuff is awesome in a way of building a society, but the whole way that these people obtained this land in which they started to frame their society, I'm like, I can't get into that. Like, I can get into it. Like, I live in the United States. I love where I live. I love where I come from. I'm not saying anti-United States, but when people get so wrapped up into this one concept of U.S. history while ignoring so many different things that led the country to a point or to this point or anything, who don't know the historical facts that led to this, that, or the other, who can't go, well, it ain't perfect, but here we are, who can't at least just say that. They're on the opposite side of the spectrum is love it or leave it, motherfucker. The best place on earth. And I'm like, I know you love it, but you've never left it. And so how would you know? And I feel that it's not rubbing in anyone's face or one-upping anyone or anything like that, but I feel that touring the world in a positive way, because there's other ways to tour the world, but touring the world with our music has been the best education for me ever.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I feel that anyone could benefit from taking a few trips and maybe making a conscious decision to make a couple trips of those not be in a resort or, someplace extremely beautiful and, all this other stuff. That you should put yourself in a position in which you're, looking outside. You're living outside of some sort of comfort zone to kind of see the real world. And I know that's easier said than done, but we've been put
especially now, yeah.
Especially now. But I mean, if I had always thought that, it would be so cool if after you graduated high school, instead of going as a 17, 18-year-old, which is bizarre and crazy anyway, to pay so much money to not even know what the concept of money is and what you can do with it and how much trouble you can get into with so much money, that you pay so much money to go to school, you're in debt for the rest of your lives, and you're never guaranteed work for that job, and you've only experienced being around similar people with similar ideas. You're lucky if you have expanded on any sort of, other, like, outside your comfort zone sort of thing. And you go through the rest of your life still thinking the things that your mom and dad, your grandparents had said was all real. And, you live your life that way for the rest of your life, and you pass that on to your children, and they do the same, and they do the same, and they do the same. Or you don't go to college and all of that cycle repeats, and so on and so forth. But I always thought that after high school, it would be so cool if it was like mandatory that you just travel for a year,
Yeah, you gain a lot of perspective when you travel to other places that are not first world European countries. Mm-hmm. Being in America, when you go to some other places where no one speaks English and the alphabet's not even English, Roman alphabet. So you can't read anything. You can't fucking communicate with other people.
Absolutely.
But you see, poverty on levels that you don't see in America. My biggest takeaway I've gotten from traveling all over the world is the realization that, A, most people are not white.
Right.
And B, we pretty much all want the same things. People
We
are
want
pretty
the
much
same
the
shit.
same.
Yep.
Pretty much everyone's the same everywhere. The things that you described that you want, you just want to live your life and hope to be successful in something that you enjoy doing and have a roof over your head, clean water, friends and family, and have a purpose. Like, that's the same shit everybody wants.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the idea of freedom is completely universal to the entire human race. And I can say, that our travels throughout the entire planet, we've been a lot of places. The biggest takeaway for me is realizing that we're all just people and we all kind of are the same. We're all cut from the same cloth, and you and I are not very different from people in Thailand or Russia or Australia or China or Finland,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
or Brazil or Colombia or Chile.
100%. 100%.
We're all pretty much the same, and we all kind of want the same things. So knowing that is what I think, that perspective and seeing it with my own two eyes, and you were right there with me. I think that adds a lot to my mentality of looking around and just being like, God damn, like, can't you see how the divide and conquer shit just keeps working? Like, we should all be way more on the same page than this. Like, what the fuck are we doing, guys?
Exactly. So, and yeah, not just a national level, because we want that across our own country, and we can't seem to find it. But exactly like you said, I love the perspective, or I would love to see someone's mind change in real time. Like what I was describing, one of my people who take lessons from me, is when someone realizes when they go to a Mexico City or they go to a Moscow, and they had all these things fed to them about Mexican people or about the Russians, or like all this stuff that people in the United States say about these people. We're always talking about Mexico and Mexican people. We're always talking about what the Russians are doing, so on and so forth.
Yep.
And I would love to see in real time someone's minds go, holy shit, this isn't bad at all. Like, this isn't even close to bad. And no one is this and no one is that. And we all want the same things. And, one of the perspectives that I've gotten, even with my kind of wariness about, being rah-rah America, is going and traveling and coming back home and being grateful for where I am, where I live, where I was born, and actually seeing and realizing that where I live is great, and having an appreciation for why this place is great. And I feel that is something who says that this is automatically the best place ever, who's never been any place ever, is missing. Like, I would love to see you actually gain some perspective and come back and tell me why, and with your own eyes and your own heart, and soul, come back and tell me in your travels, after you've come home and you can appreciate it more, tell me why it is so great and why do you think it's the best? Because I've been to a lot of places, you've been to a lot of places, and I'm gonna tell you, and I'll shout it from the rooftop, I've been to a lot of places that are pretty fucking cool. I've been to a lot of places where if I were a single man, and I'm grateful that I'm married and to a great person, but if I were a single man maybe 10 years ago or whatever it was and had the ability to do it, I wouldn't bat an eye to live in another country or anything like that, because there's great places out there to live. But I've been to a lot of other places. You've been to a lot of places too that make me realize when I eventually come home from tour, I go, God damn, man, this place is fucking cool. And I love it here. And I love the way we have things set up and what we do. And I love our food, and I love our accents, and I love our this, that, or the other. So I wish that would be a thing that people were encouraged to do more. At least cut the college in half and take 2 of those 4 years and go traveling and then do your schooling when you came back or something.
There's enough money in this planet to allow for every, late teenager to go and travel abroad.
Right.
Even if it's just, to another town. You stay in the same country, if funds are tight or whatever. But there is enough fucking funds on this planet to make that real. Obviously, it's not going to happen. But yeah, our priorities are in wacky places as an overall civilization. I don't mean like you and I or Americans specifically, but the game, the chessboard seems to be rigged. But I think that experience is the best teacher, and that goes for pretty much anything. Trial by fire.
Yep.
Experience is a great teacher. Yeah, America is very cool. We have a lot of really awesome shit here, and especially before COVID, this was like the land of convenience.
Right.
You could go to a grocery store until midnight, or you used to be able to go to them 24/7. And, you go to even first world nations in Europe and stuff, everything shuts down at like 8 p.m. and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is nothing else going on other than bars for the night. So, yeah, we are super, super lucky to have been born in this country just by accident of birth. We're super spoiled and lucky just to live when and where we do. I know I say it all the time. You've heard me say it before, but I really think that we're spoiled as fuck just to live when and where we do. We live in this age of technology. I'm talking to you right now face to face in, almost real time, and you're 5,000 miles away from me.
Right. Yep.
We all got a supercomputer in our pocket. We all eat like kings.
Yep.
Nobody's fighting wars over salt and spices.
Kings didn't even eat better than we did.
Right.
Or than we do. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we eat better than kings.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just wild. Of course, there's plenty of things. There's a lot of neurosis. There's a lot of like neurotic people in our current civilization. And that's, something to mind. But there's a lot to be grateful for, too. Even though we have a lot of things that complicate our lives and maybe make it more stressful than it would be to be a farmer 400 years ago.
Yeah.
On the other side of the coin, dude, there's a lot more to be grateful for, I think, maybe today than there was back in the day. So,
yeah,
I think gratitude equals happiness. And the more grateful you are, the more happy you're going to be at the end of the day. So, the travel perspective, I think, definitely adds to the gratitude and the feeling of, the U.S. is pretty good. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
There's a lot of other places, though, that I can say the exact same thing. Pretty good. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Yep.
There's a whole lot of those places.
Absolutely.
This place isn't the be all end all, but yeah, I agree with you. I think travel expands the mind to new places, and then it will never go back to its old shape. You open up your mind and appreciate the things here a lot more, and you also just gain perspective by being around other cultures and other people. Man, it's not the news. The propaganda machine always is telling people, the Russians are your enemy, the Chinese are your enemy, so-and-so is your enemy. But really, it's not really that way. We've been to Russia. We've been to China.
Yeah. It wasn't that way at all.
The governments don't get along, but the people themselves, they don't hate us. No. You go to Russia, no one's like, fuck you, American bastards.
No, they're grateful we're there, and we're grateful to be there.
And part of that may be because they're showing up to see us play, but we've been in plenty of situations in other countries that, on paper don't like Americans and we don't like them. We've been to plenty of those countries where we're interacting with people that are not there to see Havok. They're not grateful and stoked to see us. They're just regular people.
Yeah.
And I've never caught any shitty vibe from people. I mean, there's assholes everywhere, but I've never been in a specific country and felt the whole time like, oh man, I guess it's true. Like, people in this country really do hate Americans. I've never felt that way. Have you?
Nah, me either. Nope. Never. Not once. Nope.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the moral of the story is don't believe everything you hear. Don't believe everything you see. Don't believe everything you think. Intention to deceive. That song basically says it all with, what you're trying to consume on via media, whether that be news, radio, music, movies, TV shows, internet articles.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be keeping one eye open for.
Yeah, it's life's weird to navigate. You gotta think critically.
Yeah, man, we need a lot more of that in this time. Jesus Christ, yeah. There's way too many people jumping on bandwagons that don't make any sense just because other people are doing
sense.
it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that herd is running off the cliff. You really want to go that way?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answers all are, but I definitely see a lot of things that we could be doing better, and that's the shit that I write songs about. You know?
Right. Absolutely.
I think maybe that's part of why our last records have clicked with people. You know, maybe there's some sort of message there that resonates with them.
Right.
But I got 2 real quick questions for you, and then let's wrap this thing up.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks again, though, for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. I've had fun.
Yeah, we got to do it again sometime.
Absolutely.
So, 2 quick questions. Number 1, do you have any musical recommendations for people listening? Is there anything that you've been listening to a lot of that you suggest other people go and check out?
Oh, man. I just started firing up my old band not too long ago. And with that, I've been doing all the recording for it. I've been writing all the drums for the project. Our drummer passed away in 2013, and so I've been listening to our back catalog for a while to kind of get into Brian Bayless's, way of writing and performing drums, so that I can kind of retain some of that spirit and vibe in our new material. So I've been listening to our back catalog. And if you would like to hear that, and you don't follow me and know this already, Monolith is a very popular name. So there's many monoliths out there. I don't know what we'll do about that in the future, but as of right now, we've got a couple records out there and a couple different monoliths on Spotify. And so that's hard to navigate. But where I know they are, because I've put them up there personally, is under Monolith VA, and that's for Monolith, Virginia. And that was the best way that we could separate ourselves. We have the full-length record 4 on there, and then we have our EP Deadline on there. And we're going to have the new material out hopefully sometime in the late spring, summertime. But that would be something to go and listen to, just to kind of get a feel for what it is that I'm working on. But other than that, I've been listening to a lot of Arch Enemy.
The old stuff?
I've been listening to, a lot of, I've been listening to everything from Burning Bridges to Doomsday Machine, which is my personal favorite Arch Enemy stuff. That's the era that I really like. Now, I'm a big Jeff Loomis fan, so I've listened to the newest stuff. I love Jeff Loomis's contributions to what they've done. And then actually, one of my buddies here from Virginia, Nick Cordell, was on one of their records and the band for a period of time before Jeff Loomis. So I believe that record's called War Eternal that he's on. And it's pretty cool as well. But I'm really big into Burning Bridges and really big into Wages of Sin. But Anthems of Rebellion goes really hard, and so does Doomsday Machine. So I've been listening to those records. I've been listening to a lot of Shadows Fall, Art of Balance, and War Within.
Yep, Threads 2 classics.
Yeah, Threads of Life is cool. I've revisited that because
there's some really good shit on there.
Yeah, it's really good stuff on there. I've been listening to the newer stuff, before they kind of called it a day, just because I just didn't keep up with it after a certain period of time. And I don't know why, because I like that stuff too. But John is a big influence, has been and still is a big influence on me. I always really loved his vibrato and his vibe and his tone and stuff. So I've just been getting into that stuff just because it reminds me of kind of where I am right now, with writing music for the Monolith project.
Cool. Yeah. Kind of getting in the mindset of where you guys left off.
Yeah.
So if people, I'm going to have the links to the Monolith stuff in the description for this podcast. So if you want to check out Monolith, people, just go into the description of the podcast and click around and you'll find the Monolith stuff. But if there's a Monolith recording that people should be introduced to first, should it be the EP or should it be that full length?
It should be the full length record 4.
All right, cool. I'll make sure I link people to that.
Awesome. Hell yeah.
Sick. Yeah, I'm really stoked to hear what you guys come up with because the little clips that you guys have been sharing sound killer. I'm really excited to see what you guys do with that.
Yeah, man. It's been a real treat to be able to do this stuff. We've designated Wednesdays as our day to get together, and we've been really, really, true to Wednesday sessions. And in those Wednesday sessions, I'll shoot, a bunch of clips of us doing stuff. Now I've got Eric and Tim on shooting clips, and then I'll chop all of that up in iMovie and make a little docu-series out of it, which I think is really fun to do. I'm figuring out how to do all this stuff as it's happening, recording, video, just all of it, and I'm having an absolute blast. It gives me a sense of purpose again in a creative setting. I think it's really killer. So
it's great. Yeah, I'm stoked to hear what you guys do, and stoked that you're jiving with something that you're having fun with and is a creative outlet. Because God knows we're not doing jack piss right now. It sucks, man. We just put out the sickest record we've ever made, and have to just sit on our hands with it.
Yeah,
but we'll get back into it at some point.
For sure. Yeah, man.
Not dying to rush something out the door and get it hot off the presses immediately.
Yeah, absolutely.
There still is one that's cooling down.
Yeah, absolutely. Haven't even played one track of it live, so
no, never.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I want to ask you before we wrap this is if you could leave one message to generations in the future, one piece of wisdom or advice, what would you want to tell people?
So I had told you a couple days ago that I listened to your podcast, and I always thought that this segment was really killer, and it's something that I had thought about as soon as I heard you ask the first guest. And I was like, I'm definitely going to have this if I ever get the opportunity to be on the podcast. And my dad told me this several times throughout my life, especially when I was playing guitar and wanting to be professional. And then when I was on the road for the first time and I was very homesick.
Mm-hmm.
And then right around the time my dad, started to have like his bouts of, my dad had, a mental break there for a little bit, and he was describing what he had to do to get through. And it was the same stuff he had told me, throughout my life. I'll tell you the first instance where I heard it from him out of his own mouth. I was playing in my first ever band, and I kind of gained a reputation around town early on as the kid who plays guitar. I hadn't been playing guitar for very long before I got up on stage and played in front of people in a dive bar, like a biker bar. And then it started to really catch on here in town. Before I knew it, a band of older guys, and that's all I played with was older people. I never really played with anybody my age until I was and maybe a junior in high school. Mm-hmm. And that never really went anywhere. And then when I joined Monolith, they were still, 10 years older than I was, and I didn't start to play with anyone my literal age until I joined Havok. So when I was a kid playing the bar band circuit, playing cover tunes and sets, I was playing with people who were in their 40s and who were in the early 50s and maybe at earliest maybe 30s, older 20s or late 20s or something like that. But I remember being in a band, and we had spent some time playing for like a year together, and there was a big shift in the band, and the singer fired the rhythm guitar player. I was playing leads, and the singer brought in this random guitar player who brought in like all this equipment, this processor, which I never played with processors. He had this like Digitech processor. He had all this shit that I never had, and it made him sound like Judas Priest or some shit. It made him sound like God, and I'm over here sounding like, shitty Ace Frehley. I love Ace. I love Ace, and he's one of my guitar gods. But like wasn't that good, and I was playing straight through my amplifier. Had no idea how to really set it up really, really decent or anything like I do now. I was just trying. I was just doing my best, but I was making it work, and people were coming out to see this fucking. I was a novelty act. I'll be the first one to tell you I was a novelty act. Here's this fucking 12, 13-year-old chubby ass kid with long hair playing lead guitar, and I'm playing in front of, in this band full of adults, and we're packing houses because I'm this stupid fucking little kid playing guitar. And I'm playing in the cover bands in Virginia, I'm playing 3 sets a night. Each set is 11 songs with a 30-minute break in between sets. So I'm playing from 9 o'clock all the way till 2 in the morning. And that was standard for many, many years. And so the singer brings in this guitar player, and everybody's got to have a meeting at this time. So they sit me down, and I'm 13 or something like that, 12, 13 years old. And they sit me down, and they're like, Reece, so Robbie's going to take over the lead guitar player position. And it's going to be more like a 80-20 deal, where you'll have maybe 20% of the leads now, and he's going to have the majority of them. And I was like, my dad's sitting there too. So my dad, took me everywhere. And this is around the time my dad and I started to really bond as father and son, is when I started playing guitar. And then he really got into like being in band practices and all this shit. He was like a soccer mom, but like for, his
rock
son,
and roll.
Yeah, for rock and roll, and it was really cool. It was a great experience having my dad with me every step of the way. But in this situation, all he wanted to do was just like punch everybody's lights out. But he let me handle it. And my response to that was, I'm not in this band to be a rhythm guitar player. I'm in this band because I want to be a lead guitar player. And I feel like I've done a good job all the way up to this point. Now, I don't have the equipment that this guy has, and so I don't feel like I'm getting a fair shake. And they're like, well, it wasn't it was mainly just the singer, and he was like, well, that's just the way it's going to be. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, I'm gone. So I made a decision on my own that I quit, and I quit the band. And I'd been with this band for a year. Actually, they called me up after seeing me play one of those first times and said, would you like to join the band? There was only a bass player and a drummer. And we played several shows throughout that year that I was in the band, and they were all very positive, successful shows, experiences. Mm-hmm. But then I was out of the band, and I was down in the basement, and I was feeling sorry for myself. And my dad's like, you know what? You've got to come out swinging. You've got to come out swinging. And, the next time that you emerge from this basement and get on a stage again, you've got to be 10 times better than you ever were in the past. And the bit of advice that he gave me at this point was, and that he's been giving me for a very long time, is lace your boots. Lace your boots tight and get to work. Nobody's going to do it for you, and you're not going to get there and achieve anything sitting there waiting for anything or anyone. Lace your boots and go to work. And that's the bit of advice that I would tell anyone. It's nothing's going to get done, and no one's going to do the work for you. Nothing's going to get done if you're waiting around. You're not going to succeed. You're not going to be seen. You're not going to be heard. by miracle.
Yeah.
You've got to put the work in, and you've got to be willing to do hard fucking work. You've got to sacrifice, and you've got to fucking trudge through the bullshit. And regardless of how you feel, regardless of how you felt coming out of work that day, and knowing that you have to get up for work tomorrow, you have to lace your boots and fucking go do it. And so the next situation was, I'm on the road and I'm homesick and I just want to come home. Lace your boots and fucking go to work. So the third instance where he says this is not about me. It's about himself, and he's going through a hard time. And he says, I'm having a hard time. I can barely get through the day, but I fucking lace my boots and I go anyway. And he said, I've told you this your whole life, and now you're giving it to me. And he said, your granddad did it for 47 years. I've done it this whole time. You're doing it. Lace your boots and go to fucking work. And every time he calls me, or every time I talk to him on the road, and every time I'm like, well, I've got to get off here. I've got to go do something, equipment. I've got to go this. I got to go do that. And he goes, all right, lace your boots, go to work, get the fuck out of here. Every time. So,
yeah, it's good advice, man. It reminds me of Airheads when, they're like, don't worry, like, we're going to get our break. And, Chaz, Brendan Fraser's character is like, see, that's the problem with you guys. You guys always think that something's going to happen to us. Got to go out and make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Same concept, but I don't mean to trivialize what you're saying and bring up Airheads, but it's pretty much the same logic here. You got to fucking go make it. It's like that Metallica lyric, advantages are taken, not handed out. Exactly.
I mean, and it in every aspect of life that applies to me, for me. And, with COVID is getting ready to decimate all normal living as we know it.
Yep.
And nothing is going to be the same afterwards or anything. And I go, okay, well, I'm going to do what I got to do. I'm going to lace my boots and go to fucking work, and literally go to work. Or, okay, I have a Dean endorsement. I'm with a bigger company now, and I have an obligation to, at least in my mind, I've got an obligation to do something with this. All right, lace your boots and go to fucking work. I've got this project on my hands. I don't know anything about recording. All right, well, you've got the equipment. Lace your boots and get the fucking work. So that's the way it is. Adapt, and whatever's in front of you, you can work through it, and you've got to get up and do it, because if you want to achieve something, you've got to fucking work. Just go to work.
Yeah, sound advice, wise words. There's like a Stoic saying, the obstacle is the way. You got to just fucking plow through it, man. You can't.
Right.
There's no shortcuts. There's no easy way around it. The obstacle is the way. You got to lace up your boots and get to work.
Yeah. My granddad, he worked in a factory from 6 a.m. till 3:30 every day. Then he came home for about a half hour. Then he went and cleaned buildings. And then after he cleaned buildings, he went to a body shop and painted cars, and then came home at 10:30, then got up and did all of that the next day. He did that for 47 years and continued to work. He continued to clean those buildings after he retired from the factory. So I'm more than certain my granddad was beaten down, and he's beaten down now from all those years of doing that stuff, but he laced his fucking boots anyway and he went to work. He did what he had to do. And I'm his grandson, and I'm going to uphold that tradition and do what I've got to fucking do, and lace my boots and go to work. So,
hell yeah, that's a good way to end this thing.
Yeah, man, it's been a pleasure.
Good advice. No, it's been a fucking mega pleasure, dude. I really loved talking to you, especially on here, and we're not in a vehicle.
Yeah.
Exhausted and thinking about, should I drink another beer or go to sleep?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to do this again. Anytime you want to come on, maybe when the Monolith stuff is out and you want to promote it or whatever, I would love to have you on anytime you have something to plug. You're always welcome.
Sounds great, man. I would love that.
Yeah, we'll definitely do it again. For surely.
That's badass. Hell yeah.
Thanks a lot for taking the time. I know we talked for quite a while, a lot longer than I thought we would, honestly, but I'm totally all right with it. Is there anything else you want to say to the people before we end it?
Say to the people. No, for real. Any and all support, even in this time, is and has been incredible and really cool. The fact that you even really give a shit to even to continue on our journey, Havok, or our personal journeys, I think that's amazing. And thanks for support.
Yes, thanks everybody for listening to this. If you've made it this far, you are a champion of the universe. Reece Scruggs signing off. And
hell yeah.
I will talk to y'all sometime soon. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Woo! That was a long one. What a doozy. Just a quick reminder, guys. Hit riffsordie.com if you want to get your hands on some cool merch, or you can support by going to patreon.com/riffsordie. You'll get some free merch, and you'll also get the chance to hang out, ask me anything you want, get discounts at the web store, and have access to all sorts of bonus episodes of the podcast. To everyone that's already signed up, thank you very, very much for your subscription. It means a lot to me. I wish you all well, and take care of each other, everyone. I'll talk to you all next week. Goodbye.